Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to Utility Sports. Today, we're going to be taking a look at Mel Kiper's predictions for the 2021 NFL Draft. I have not looked at any mock drafts out of our own channel, no outside information. Austin, the other content creator here at Utility Sports, has not either. So this is our first look really at what other people are saying. I'm kind of interested just to dive into it. I have not read this article yet. I have no idea, even if he has Trevor Lawrence going first overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars or not. My assumption is I'm sure he does, but we'll go ahead and check that out right now. This is an ESPN Plus article as well. So if you guys are interested in seeing more of this kind of content, make sure you hit that like button. This is on ESPN. We will have the link to this in the description for those of you that do have ESPN Plus and are interested in reading this article. So now let's just jump into it here. Let's scroll slowly. And here we are with pick number 1 now. The Jacksonville Jaguars, he has them taking Trevor Lawrence, okay? Quarterback out of Clemson, there's not a lot to say about this pick. I think that it's pretty obvious Trevor Lawrence is the far and away best prospect in this draft. That is how Mel Kiper is looking at this as well. This is the obvious pick. It was tanked for Trevor all year long. Ever since he was a freshman, he came into Clemson, was an absolute baller for the Clemson Tigers. Here now he's going to the Jaguars at 1. This is an obvious pick. This is going to be consensus across all mock drafts. This has been consensus across all of our mock drafts. There was a little bit of noise for Justin Fields a little bit. We never really bought into it. Lawrence is going to be the first overall selection, and at the end of the day, he will be a Jacksonville Jaguar. At 2 now, the New York Jets. And I am a Jets fan, so let's think about some of the things that we could be looking at here. We could be looking at Penei Sewell, who I'd really like. We could be looking at Devontae Smith possibly. I really like Devontae Smith. Jamar Chase is an option here. There's a couple of routes that they could look. One being you grab that tackle. Another option you could be grab that quarterback. That could be Zach Wilson or Justin Fields. But I don't think that Mel Kiper is going to do that. I just have a feeling he's pretty in tune with the whole quarterback situation. I tend to agree with him a little bit more from past mocks that I've looked at in past years. And I just tend to agree with him a little bit in how he had kind of gone about quarterback situations. So I don't think he's going to mock a QB to the Jets here. I could be wrong on this, though. I think he might mock a wide receiver, but I really hope it's Penei Sewell, to be honest. And it is Devontae Smith, wide receiver out of Alabama. And his reasoning here, okay, he's talking about sticking with Darnold for another year because he's not sure if they're for sure upgrades there with Zach Wilson or Justin Fields. Obviously, if the Jets had the first pick, you select Trevor Lawrence. There's no question about that. But at pick 2, there is a question. Is Zach Wilson or Justin Fields going to be better than Sam Darnold? We don't know that for sure. Darnold's only 23 years old. He's young yet, hasn't had a true number 1 receiver. Don't really have a tight end to throw the ball to. Running game's been really bad. Offensive line's been terrible. It's about trying to build this thing up around him. Maybe give him one more shot. We have 2 first-rounders next year. Could always make a move in the draft next season to try and figure out that QB position if Sam Darnold proves one more time that he is not the guy. I've been very critical of him. I don't really believe he's the guy, but at the same time, I don't believe it's worth taking Zach Wilson or Justin Fields at 2 because I don't believe either of them are sure upgrades. Moving on to pick 3, he has the Miami Dolphins taking Jamar Chase. That's the first time we've seen that here on the channel. We have not mocked Jamar Chase to the Dolphins this high at pick 3. It's obvious that they could use a wide receiver. They really need someone who can be a weapon for them. I do like this quite a bit. Jamar Chase, he was so dominant in 2019 with Joe Burrow. I think it's very possible that he's the best receiver from this class, actually. Obviously, we see Devontae Smith going first from that wide receiver position, but Jamar Chase comes off the board next to Miami. We have 2 wide receivers in the top 3 picks. That is something that's very rare, and this is the first time, actually, we had a wide receiver go in the top 2 since Calvin Johnson out of Georgia Tech. Hopefully, Devontae Smith is that type of weapon for my New York Jets, but now we have Jamar Chase coming to the division as well for the Miami Dolphins. I really like what he has. Short to intermediate route running, deep route running. He's a guy who can make it happen after the catch. Physical receiver, gets off the line really well. I really like that for Miami. I think he'd be a great fit with Tua. So now we have the Falcons here. And I don't really know where he's going to go with the Falcons pick. I think possibly QB. Get that long-term replacement behind Matt Ryan. That's something we've mocked on the channel quite a bit as well. But I'm interested to see where he has them going. He has them going Zach Wilson, quarterback out of BYU. And he is talking about the long-term offense, okay, under the new GM, Terry Fontenot, and also the head coach, Arthur Smith. Matt Ryan's going to turn 36. He's getting up there in age. Alex Mack is 35. They need to add a center as well later in the draft. But Zach Wilson comes in. He's going to be that franchise QB for the Falcons moving forward. I think this is a better situation for him than the New York Jets. The Jets really don't have an infrastructure yet. Grabbing a QB wouldn't provide that infrastructure. And you're not going to sit Zach Wilson behind Sam Darnold for a year. You'd probably thrust Wilson into that starting role. With Matt Ryan there, you can easily tell Zach Wilson, hey, we have our franchise QB out there still. He's up there in age. You're going to sit for a year, maybe two. But then at that point, you're going to get the reins to this offense, the reins to this franchise. He gets to learn the system. Arthur Smith's going to be there a long time. He's going to be there at least 4 or 5 years. Zach Wilson comes in, learns the offense. He's going to be successful when he starts playing if he goes to Atlanta. Now at 5 here, we haven't seen Penei Sewell go off the board. So I think Penei Sewell should be the pick here. I would be surprised if Mel Kiper doesn't have that. And he does have that. Okay. Penei Sewell comes off the board to the Cincinnati Bengals at 5. I really like this. I think that he's the best offensive lineman in the class. You know, some people seem to like Rashawn Slater a little bit more from what I'm hearing from circles and stuff like that. But And I do acknowledge Slater is very good, and I think Slater has a real path in the NFL to be a really good player. However, I just think Sewell's slightly better. I know Sewell's not as versatile across the offensive line, but it's not like you can have a guy play all 5 positions at once. For the Bengals, it's about grabbing a tackle, someone who can play across from Jonah Williams. My assumption is Jonah Williams kicks to right tackle. Penei Sewell plays left tackle for Cincinnati if the board does play out like this. Now at 6, we've been mocking wide receivers to Philadelphia. Is this a little high for Jalen Waddle? I'm not really sure. I'm interested to see what Mel Kiper has to say. And he does go with Jalen Waddle. Okay. And I think that the wide receiver position is a really big need. You can't really pass on it. So this is an interesting situation on how the board could play out for Philadelphia here, where we have 3 wide receivers going the top 6. Maybe the Eagles are in love with Jalen Waddle. There's a pathway that Jalen Waddle could be the guy that they would actually prefer. If looking last year, no one thought Henry Ruggs would be the first guy off the board until he ran his combine, put up a 4.27 40, and all of a sudden he was flying up boards. Jalen Waddle has that type of speed, not necessarily 4.27, but he's going to run in the 4.3s for sure. Extremely quick athlete, dynamic, can put him in the slot, can put him out wide, can beat people with his route running as well. There's a chance that he could be the first or second receiver off the board. I know that sounds crazy with how good Devontae Smith was this year. I think it's possible Jamar Chase falls a little bit because he was an opt-out. And I know Devontae Smith was crazy, and he's going to run a good 40 time as well. I'm not suggesting he won't, but Jalen Waddle will run a better one. There might be some GMs that think it's very possible that Jalen Waddle could have a higher ceiling than him. I'm not saying I believe that. I think Devontae Smith's better. But remember last year, Jalen Reagor went before Justin Jefferson. GMs get this wrong. Executives get it wrong. Jalen Waddle does go 6 here. I don't think that's necessarily a bad pick. I'm just thinking, you know, even if the 2 receivers don't go off the board, if the Eagles do love Jalen Waddle, they could grab him at 6 regardless of what the board looks like. Now at 7, the Detroit Lions, another pivot point in this draft. Traded Matthew Stafford, got Jared Goff, also brought in 2 firsts and a third. Now it's going to be about hitting that reset button for them. I don't know if that entails quarterback here or if that means, you know, getting a weapon would be something I'd look at, but there's already 3 wide receivers off the board. They have a tight end already in TJ Hawkinson. I don't see them going Kyle Pitts at this point. Maybe it's about grabbing a defensive player for that front 7. Let's see who Mel Kiper is mocking here. It is Justin Fields, quarterback out of Ohio State. He does think that a QB is in the realm of possibility. In our last mock draft, which I'll have a card right here for it, we got a lot of hate for suggesting that the Lions will look at a quarterback. Mel Kiper is now saying the same thing, that they will look at that QB position to grab a guy who could be a starter long-term behind Jared Goff, learn for a little bit. Goff is the bridge QB at that point then. And they could probably move Goff for an asset later on, especially when his deal gets closer to expiring, when teams don't have to take on so much money for Jared Goff here. Fields comes in. He is the Detroit Lions option long-term, I guess, according to Mel Kiper. We had mocked, I believe, was it Trey Lance? It was either Trey Lance or Zach Wilson. Here, Fields goes to the Detroit Lions at 7. He falls just a little bit in this mock draft. At 8 now for Mel Kiper, he's looking at the Carolina Panthers grabbing Trey Lance. Okay, so we see Lance go not far behind Justin Fields here as the fourth quarterback off the board. We remember we had Lawrence 1, we had Zach Wilson 4, Justin Fields 7, Trey Lance 8. So 4 in the top 8 go. And now we're seeing some guys get pushed down. Rashawn Slater hasn't gone. Micah Parsons hasn't gone. We haven't had a cornerback off the board yet. Kwity Paye still available. That's adjusting and affecting how this board is going to play out for some of these teams between picks 10 through 18. That's going to be really important to watch. Lance goes to Carolina, though. I think it is very important that they find their franchise QB. I don't think Teddy Bridgewater is the long-term answer there. I'm a little skeptical of his ability to really push the ball down the field consistently. I know he played pretty solid this past year, but I think that's more of a product of Joe Brady and Matt Rule than it is of that quarterback. I think getting a real NFL good starting quarterback in there could give that offense even more juice. They had 3 1,000-yard guys from scrimmage this past year, being Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, rather. And I think that they could look to build off of that, and they're going to try and do that at the QB position. At 9 now we have the Denver Broncos. I think this is going to be a cornerback. I don't see a way Mel Kiper doesn't mock a cornerback here. And he doesn't. He mocks Micah Parsons. Actually, that is a good pick. They badly do need a linebacker, and I think that would actually be a really good fit next to Josie Jewell. Micah Parsons, I think of him more as a weak side linebacker, someone who's going to use his athleticism, kind of like what we see with Myles Jack in Jacksonville. And I think that's the better fit for him. Also kind of what we see with Anthony Barr in Minnesota next to Eric Kendricks. I think Parsons fits that mold really well. And he's going to come into Denver. He's going to give them someone who can get after the QB from that linebacker spot every once in a while. You could line him up in a variety of different places. You run him at outside linebacker, inside linebacker as a weak side guy. I really like this for Denver. I think that Parsons gives them a little bit of flexibility. Now, they do badly need a cornerback. I'm not sure how Mel Kiper would see them addressing that. If that's a free agent thing, maybe go out and get Richard Sherman. I don't know if that's a fit in Vic Fangio's defense, though. That would be something I'd have to monitor for Denver. You need to have elite cornerback play in that division. Remember, you're going to be going up against Henry Ruggs, Tyrell Williams if he's healthy, and back next year for the Raiders. Also, Tyreek Hill, obviously, Mecole Hardman. That division has a lot of talented receivers. You need to be able to deal with that. That's a question mark for me, but I like Micah Parsons in Denver. At 10 here, we have the Cowboys going Rashawn Slater, so he sticks on the offensive line. And we've seen both cornerbacks, Patrick Surtain and Caleb Farley, fall to the top 10. That's something in our mock drafts we have not done. Remember to go check those out if you guys haven't already. Also, hit that subscribe button if you are new. But wow, the Cowboys here grab Slater. He's very flexible. I really do like this. They were very injured on that offensive line. They didn't have Travis Frederick this year because he retired. Lyle Collins was out. Tyron Smith missed a lot of games. Zach Martin missed a lot of games. This team's going to be a much better next season. They didn't have their starting quarterback, Dak Prescott, for a majority of the year. I hope he comes back healthy. That offensive line is going to be healthier. Adding Rashawn Slater gives you another legit number one talent type of offensive lineman. I think he is the second best offensive lineman in this class, right behind Penei Sewell. And I really think that there's a little bit of a drop-off after Slater, actually. I really like this. I know Austin, the co-creator on this channel, is really high on Slater as well. He goes in the top 10 here to Dallas in Mel Kiper's mock draft. Now the New York Giants at 11. We've been looking at them at wide receiver a lot. Remember, the top 3 wideouts are off the board. It's very possible he could look at Surtain here, give them another man-to-man corner on the outside across from Bradbury. I think Bradbury could use another partner in crime over there. He's really, really good. But the other thing I'm looking for is maybe Kyle Pitts here. And he does go Kyle Pitts. Okay, Kyle Pitts out of Florida. He is the tight end, 6'6", incredible playmaker. He's a guy who's going to be able to stretch the field. He can act as a vertical threat. He can act as a possession receiver too underneath. He's going to line up in a variety of different spots. He can line up in the slot, out wide even. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Jimmy Graham when Jimmy Graham was in New Orleans. The flexibility he provides, remember, the whole contract dispute with Jimmy Graham and the New Orleans Saints when he tried saying he was a pass catcher wide receiver because of where he lined up, spent a lot of time off the line of scrimmage. I look at Pitts the same way. He's not going to be a real blocking tight end. He's not going to give you that, but he's going to give you so much versatility as a catcher of the football. I really like that for the New York Giants. 12, he has Patrick Surtain going, okay, so we get the first cornerback off the board here to San Francisco, a place that really badly needs it as well. They lost their defensive coordinator, Robert Saleh, to the New York Jets. They need to improve that defense, especially in the secondary. That front 7 is very, very lethal. Fred Warner is one of the best linebackers in football. They have one of the best D-lines in football. Now it's going to be about making sure that you can cover guys out in space, give time to that pass rush to get home. Surtain is a man-to-man guy. I like this a lot. If they bring back Jason Verrett as well, you're looking at a solid 1-2 option there in Surtain and Verrett moving forward. Now at 13, we have the LA Chargers. And to me, offensive tackle's a big need. Interior offensive lineman's a big need. I would maybe look at Elijah Vera-Tucker here. I really like Elijah Vera-Tucker. I'm very high on him. I think he's one of the best offensive linemen in this class. I'd probably rank him at third after Slater. Even though he's not a true tackle, I think he gives you a little bit of that flexibility. He can kick out the tackle if you need. He's an interior offensive lineman. I like that a lot for the Chargers here. They need to build up that offensive line. The other thing we could be looking at here is maybe an edge, Kwity Paye, possibly Gregory Rousseau to replace Melvin Ingram. That's kind of the two spots I'm looking at here. And he does go Christian Darrisaw, actually. So he does stick with a true offensive tackle. I can see that as well. That is the bigger need for them. They really need to build up that left tackle. Remember, they have Brian Bulaga at right tackle, who they signed from the Packers last offseason. I think that this does make sense for the Chargers. I think Mel Kiper is doing actually a pretty good job as well at this point. I'm a little surprised that he didn't have Dallas or Denver grab corners, but I think that they're very justifiable the way he went. And I think that's really important to look at here is, he has different opinions than what I have. But I think there's good logic behind that. And whenever you're looking at a mock draft, even if you don't agree necessarily with the pick, you have to look and try and understand the reasoning for it. And I think that he's doing a very good job so far at this point. At 14 here, he does have Elijah Vera-Tucker go right after that. So there's that kind of question mark that I had. And this actually fits pretty well with the Viking situation. Ezra Cleveland played at guard this past year. People want him to be a left tackle. Grabbing Vera-Tucker gives you a guy who's played at tackle, played at guard. He could do a little bit of both. You have some flexibility now. Maybe in mini camp, OTAs, through the preseason, you give them snaps at both spots, figure out which one's going to be the more stable tackle for you, and then put the other one at guard. I think that's the better situation for the Minnesota Vikings. And I'm very high on Elijah Vera-Tucker. I think he's the third best offensive lineman in this class, and him coming into Minnesota would be a good grab in my opinion. I like this mock draft selection from Mel Kiper. At 15 now, the New England Patriots, he goes Mac Jones. Okay. So Mac Jones flies up the board to 15. We have not mocked him that high all year long. We have not mocked him that high. That's a little interesting to me. He thinks the Patriots here reach on a QB. Cam Newton's not coming back. And it sounds like Jimmy Garoppolo, the trade value is going to maybe Minnesota for Kirk Cousins, but I don't think that a deal is going to ultimately get done there. Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo ends back up in New England. But here he sees Mac Jones being the long-term answer for Bill Belichick. They do have to do something about that QB position. I just don't know if it's worth taking Jones at 15. They have so many holes on that team. They really don't have any pass catchers. They don't have guys who can create consistent separation. Julian Edelman is still their best receiver, and he's getting up there in age. They need a tight end bat as well. Kyle Pitts have been someone we love mocking. Obviously, he's off the board here. To me, if I'm New England, I would not spend pick 15. I'd be more aggressive using my second and third to maybe move back up to pick 32 if Mac Jones is still on the board, because I don't know if it's necessarily true that he goes this high. And I think that's possible. He could fall to the back end of the first round. If I'm New England, I'm not taking Jones at 15. I'm going to go with a receiver. Obviously, the receivers have thinned out a little bit, or I'm going to go with some form of pass catcher. And at this point, I just don't really like this for New England as much. But they are a tough team to mock when Kyle Pitts is not on the board and the top three receivers are off already as well. So I do understand this a little bit from Mel Kiper, and I think this is possible. This is just not what I would do if I was running New England. 16, they ask Caleb Farley go. Okay, Caleb Farley finally comes off the board. He is for sure a top two cornerback in this class. Very possible he could be number one. He's still learning the position a little bit, and the Cardinals badly need a corner. They only have 200 contract, one of them being Byron Murphy, who's going to play in the slot a little bit more. This way you get your true outside corner in Caleb Farley, someone who can be, maybe a guy who can cover number one receivers in the future. I think that Mel Kiper nailed this pick at 16. I don't think that Caleb Farley would go past 16 in the mock. In the real draft, I just don't see it. Unless Patrick Surtain fell to 16 as well, then maybe the Cardinals have a pick 'em between the two. But I do think the top two corners in this class, Surtain and Farley, are both off the board in the top 16, just like Mel Kiper believes here. 17 as the Raiders go with Jalen Phillips. So we see Phillips go off the board, and he has really, 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 really flown up boards. You see here, he says that he could possibly be the top edge prospect. there's not a lot of great edges in this class, to be honest. Kwity Paye's one of the top ones, but he doesn't fit some of these schemes. There's a few different situations that could lead to a variety of different guys being the first edge off the board. I think it's possible Gregory Rousseau, based off his physical stature and frame and his potential. I think Jalen Phillips is one of the more NFL-ready guys. Kwity Paye is a freak athlete. I think that there's a little bit of different there's a few different avenues that could really transpire to lead one of these guys to be the first edge off the board. I like Mel Kiper. Do not believe that there's a true top guy at that position. Jalen Phillips going here at 17 makes sense to me, though. They do need to get more pressures after the QB. They need to get more sacks, and that's going to help grabbing Jalen Phillips, someone who really shined in Miami this past year. The Dolphins, he has going Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. We had mocked him to the Raiders multiple times. I do think that the Raiders would maybe look at Owusu-Koramoah over Phillips, but I think it is very possible to go with that edge position. They need it. Dolphins then come in, grab that linebacker, and I love this pick. Brian Flores grabs the linebacker. I think that they might even be aggressive on draft night, moving up from 18. They have the assets to do it. Maybe want to move up to 14, 15 to make sure that they get Owusu-Koramoah. He's going to fit perfectly next to Kyle Van Noy into that Brian Flores defense, and that's going to be something really big that they try and add moving forward. I would not be surprised if the Dolphins make an aggressive move to make sure they get him on draft night, something we saw the Chargers do last year with Kenneth Murray. At 19, now we have the Washington football team, and he goes with Kadarius Toney out of Florida. Kadarius Toney has really flown upwards. He's a really good athlete, can get run after the catch. I like what he gives. We saw him in Florida with Kyle Trask, and now we have the second Florida pass catcher going off the board in the top 20. And this is kind of affecting how the board's falling too. Remember here, I had mentioned earlier from picks 10 to 18, that's going to affect it. Owusu-Koramoah being a big one, Caleb Farley being a big one. Some of those guys have fallen a little bit from what we usually mock on our channel. So it's very interesting looking at Mel Kiper here. Remember, this is the first time I've looked at a mock draft that is not our own as well. So this is just a little bit different. There's a few different ideas that I can kind of see from it. He thinks Washington needs to go with the wide receiver. I think that they should really look at the tackle spot. There's still a couple out there. Jalen Mayfield, for example, could be one. But maybe, Kadarius Toney could be one of the better receivers from this class. I do think that they need another one next to Terry McLaurin. And he would be a really good one to have. At 20, he has the Bears going with Tevin Jenkins, an offensive tackle from Oklahoma State. He was another option here that I thought maybe would go to Washington. The Bears do need an offensive tackle. I think the best case scenario for the Chicago Bears on draft day is that Elijah Vera Tucker falls to 20. I don't think that happens, but that would be the best case scenario for them. It gives you someone who's going to be versatile in that interior offensive line, maybe tackle spot. Gives you some flexibility going throughout the rest of the draft. Free agency, if you can sign a guard, you sign a guard, you play Vera Tucker at tackle, and vice versa. If you grab Vera Tucker, you can grab a tackle, play him at guard. Guys like Brandon Scherf are going to be available this offseason, Trent Williams as well. Maybe Chicago makes a run at one of those two guys. That would be interesting. They need to figure out that QB's position as well. But I agree here at pick 20, if Mac Jones is off the board, they do not look QB quite yet. They go in offensive tackle route. Colts grab Kwity Paye here at 21. That's an interesting selection as well. They need to get after the passer a little bit more often as well. I believe Justin Houston is going to be a free agent this year as well. I think one thing about grabbing Kwity Paye here is this is a strong pick for the Colts, and they're a place that could help develop him, harness his athleticism, and put him in situations to get after the QB. Their cornerback room has played so consistently over the past few years. Getting an edge rusher would really help elevate that unit as well. Someone who can get after the QB a little bit more frequently, a little bit more consistently, and with more quickness could help even improve that Colts secondary to the next level. Tennessee Titans here, he has them grabbing Gregory Rousseau. So now this is a little bit of a run here on the DNs. We have 3 DNs go within about 6 picks or so, and Gregory Rousseau comes off the board. He makes a lot of sense here. They didn't get after the pass rusher. Their leading sack guy last year, Harold Landry, had 5.5 sacks. You got Rousseau, who's a huge player, really had a great year before opting out this past year. Did not play this past year, but the year before really broke out. People are looking at him as possibly a top 10 pick in the draft. He falls to 22, and this makes sense for the Tennessee Titans. A few years ago, they drafted Jeffrey Simmons. He had fallen because of the ACL. Now they draft Rousseau, who's fallen because of the opt-out situation. I think that this makes a lot of sense. I think that the Tennessee Titans with Rousseau on the board would probably go in that direction. 23 has my New York Jets grab J.C. Horn. Thank God That's what I was hoping. He had fallen a little bit. I think he's a top 20 prospect in this class. He comes now. We've really improved the outside of the numbers play for my New York Jets here. We got Devontae Smith at pick 2. We got J.C. Horn at pick 23. We can't cover anybody as we currently sit. If you look at a Jets mock draft and they at least don't mention cornerback as a need, you're not watching the right mock draft. Here, Mel Kiper nails it. We need J.C. Horn really badly. We need someone who's going to be a legit number 1 corner, someone who could play into that role. Think about it. We have to go against Stephon Diggs twice a year. We're going to have to go against now Jamar Chase twice a year if the Dolphins do grab him in this draft. Devontae Parker as well. You need to have cover guys, someone who can really step out there, pick up coverage, and compete there. It's also very possible that we sign Richard Sherman this offseason. Having Horn and Sherman would be much improvement over what we were running this past year with Bless Austin as our number 1 corner after the Pierre Desir release. J.C. Horn, I really like this pick for the New York Jets. At 24, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he has Zaven Collins out of Tulsa. That is a little interesting to me. I don't think I would necessarily look that way. And he actually looks at Zaven Collins as a guy who's going to possibly be an edge rusher to replace Bud Dupree. I'm not sure. I look at Zaven Collins more as a true interior linebacker. He looks at him as more of a pass rusher. That's interesting to me. I think Zaven Collins is a really good player. I just don't necessarily know if this is perfect here. The Steelers do have a very good track record of developing edges, though. So if they did draft Collins to play that edge position, I think that he has the physical tools and some of the ability you need to get there. But I think he's best suited on the interior, and they already have Devin Bush there. I guess that's a little surprising to me. But I guess I can understand his thinking a little bit. I think Collins is a really good player, and the Steelers tend to draft really good players pretty consistently with their picks, especially on the defensive side of the football. I thought maybe he'd look at a running back here. Does not go that direction, though. At 25, he has Christian Barmore to the Jaguars, and I think Austin would really love this, actually. They drafted Devon Hamilton last year, but they are switching to a 3-4. So they need a true nose tackle. I think Hamilton could be that. Maybe you put Barmore at an end spot. Barmore is going to eat up blocks. He's going to shed blocks. He's going to be really good in the run game, and you need that in a 3-4 on that defensive line. Remember, they got their pass rushers already, K'Lavon Chase on Josh Allen. You need someone who's going to come in on the interior, eat up blocks, eat them up. I mean, just absolutely eat them up. Christian Barmore does that. He did that all year for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Really, in the college football playoffs, he shined a lot on that defense. Big part of both of their key wins as they won a national championship. And I really do like this pick. I think that he's played himself into a first-round type of talent. Will he go in the first round? I'm not certain he will yet at this point, but I do think he is worthy of a first-round pick if he does go. Cleveland Browns at 26, and they go Aaron Robinson, the defensive back out of UCF. He has flown up boards a little bit. I do think it's very vital for the Browns to look in the secondary during this draft. I just don't know if they do it in the first round. They need to address safety. They could really use another one. I know they took Grant Delpit last year, but I think that they could use another guy. They were relying on Andrew Sendejo this year. I don't know if Ronnie Harrison comes back either. He's already 28 years old. Greedy Williams, we haven't gotten to see a lot of him, but I think this may be more of a round 2, round 3 pick. I think round 1, they either look at that linebacker spot or possibly a true edge. But I do see his thinking here as a defensive back selection, cornerback Aaron Robinson. He has the Ravens go Terrace Marshall Jr. We've actually mocked that here on the channel a couple of times. And I understand his reasoning. You get another red zone threat for Lamar Jackson, someone who can be a legitimate red zone scoring type of threat, someone Lamar Jackson could rely on down there. Also, someone who's going to have some potential to, create separation. He's a big body receiver, 6'3", can go get the football. And I think that would help, improve Lamar Jackson's passing game there in Baltimore. I see that. I also think it's possible the Ravens wait on a wide receiver until round 2, maybe grab Amon-Ra St. Brown. He can kind of give you some of those similar things, more of a true run blocker, still a big guy. I think a little bit less receiving potential there with Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I think that that's another direction they could look. I think interior offensive line is really a big need for the Ravens with how much they run the football. But I can see his reasoning here again on Terrace Marshall Jr. And then, again, that's something we have mocked in the past as well. At 28, he has Trayvon Merrick go in the first round. Okay, we have not had that happen. We have not mocked a safety in the first round. They have a lot of free agents. Their salary cap space is an absolute mess there in New Orleans. Right now, they're $93 million over the cap. They don't have the roster filled out. They're going to have to restructure a lot of contracts. They're going to have to release some guys. It's going to be a messy situation in New Orleans. I think that this season could end up being very, very bad for them, to be honest, especially if no Drew Brees is around. Yes, Sean Payton's a great head coach. He's going to get the best out of his players, but they've got a really interesting situation with the salary cap. Merritt comes in. He's going to be a safe, cheap option. That's going to help them move on from Marcus Williams here. I think that's his biggest reasoning on mocking that. I guess that's understandable. I think that they could use a variety of different positions. I think wide receiver could be helpful for them. Maybe move on from Emmanuel Sanders. I think that very possibly you could look at a cornerback here, but he goes safety. I understand that. It's not a terrible selection, just not necessarily what I would do. Green Bay Packers, he mocks Tyson Campbell. That makes sense. Kevin King got absolutely dotted up in the NFC Conference Championship game. He had the worst day of his career, and I think that's not going to bode well for his future in Green Bay. They're going to look to grab a number 2 corner, and Tyson Campbell is going to be that guy. 6'2" frame. He's a little bit bigger of a guy. I think he could go across from Jair Alexander and be a legit number 2 corner in the NFL. He has the Bills grab Najee Harris here, which is a little interesting to me. I know that they need a run game. I'm very vocal that they do need a run game, but Brian Daboll doesn't prefer running the ball. He prefers throwing the ball, airing it out, putting the ball in Josh Allen's hands. He is their best player, Josh Allen is. They brought in Stephon Diggs. They want to throw the football. I just don't know if Najee Harris is really the pick for Buffalo. I know it's a need. I just don't know if it fits with what they really do. I think that they should look at maybe a linebacker or a corner. Matt Milano did play pretty well this year, though, so it's hard to say that he shouldn't, stick around there at that linebacker spot, but I do think it's possible that they could upgrade there. At 31, he has Joe Tryon from Washington. Tryon's been moving up boards as well, from what I've heard. He has just, rised up. Washington has 2 defensive linemen that are going to be drafted in the early part of this NFL draft, probably both going to be top 50 picks for sure. Joe Tryon comes in. I think it's about, saving some of that money as well on the defensive side of the football. We've mocked edges here before. We've mocked some D tackles to Tampa. It's going to be about, staying cheap, whether that's Shaq Barrett goes or Ndamukong Suh goes. One of those two is not going to be back next year, and it's going to be for Tampa Bay, filling that position with a cheap, young, and good player. And at 32, he has Azeez Ojulari out of Georgia going to the Chiefs. I thought he would maybe look at the wide receiver position, although it has thinned out a little bit now with who's gone off the board. But the Chiefs grab a D end, Azeez Ojulari. I like that a lot. They need to grab another pass rusher. I very much agree with them. Frank Clark didn't have a great year. I think he's still a good player, but they do need to improve on the other edge spot. Chris Jones, obviously really, really good in the interior. Only had 7 sacks, I believe. They just didn't get home as much, but they were impactful this year still. I really do believe that. Ojulari comes in. Now you have a legitimate, another edge rusher, someone who can go across from Frank Clark, and you have some pass rush flexibility. You can bring guys in like Kapassignon, Alex Okafor on pass rush downs. You can keep those guys' legs fresh. I like that for Kansas City. Gives you some depth at a really important position. So that's been Mel Kiper's mock draft here. Let me know what you guys think of it. I think he did a pretty good job overall. It's quite a bit different from what we've seen. We had not mocked Micah Parsons to Denver. I don't know if we've mocked Trey Lance to Carolina or not. We had not mocked Jalen Waddle to Philadelphia. There's a few different shakeups here. 2 wide receivers in the top 3. It's very interesting. It was a good read to look over. First time looking at another mock draft this year. Let me know if this is something you guys are interested in watching on the channel moving forward. We can maybe do one of these with Daniel Jeremiah possibly. And I could give my insights on it. I hope you guys really did enjoy the video. If you did, smash that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. If you are new to utility sports, we have the best subscribers on the planet. And we'll catch you guys in the next video.